vous pensez?
Mais c'est pas spécifique à ce jeu-là, c'est tous les autres. Je sais pas pourquoi les articles sont si longs.
Ouais.
Un compte.
Mais bon, le truc, c'est que, ouais. Est-ce qu'il faut qu'on rallonge le time-out du projet? Parce que
Vous êtes déjà d'accord là?
Oui,
Donc, je peux pas faire ça, je dois télécharger avec tout. Donc là, ça fait hier, j'ai démarré les tri. J'ai fait sur le répertoire avec des filles.
On est là avec lui.
J'ai sélectionné tous mes emails, les idées appliquées. Là. Bon,
Voilà. Je sais pas, j'attends mieux.
ça c'est le résultat. Donc j'imagine que pour bouger chaque
ça, c'était un peu pour lui,
contacter les serveurs alimentaires.
Oui, non, mais Emilio, c'est Emilio. Hein. Enfin,
Les Espagnols sont toujours à la course, c'est une course en finir.
il faudrait juste. Il n'y a qu'à faire un horaire pour eux et un horaire pour les autres. Oui, mais bon, comme c'est lui qui a organisé le working group, c'est un peu difficile. Mais c'est à cause du sujet.
Là, c'était déjà fait.
C'est lui qui m'a mis en
interversion.
Ouais, mais s'il y a la moitié de la planète qui se connecte. Oui, alors la moitié de la planète. Mais l'autre, c'est pour Hugo. Donc, ça sert à rien. Je prends encore moins l'arrivée à l'heure de Hugo que de Emilio. Non, mais c'est après. Et c'est lui qui m'a mis.
Tout ce qu'on fait, tout le rapport.
Mais bon, ouais. Non, il vaut mieux faire celui-là sans Emilio que l'autre sans Emilio. Ça aura qu'un. Mais bon. Enfin, quand même, ça me gêne beaucoup. Je propose qu'on appelle. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'il y a plus tard aussi qui pourrait être. Après, c'est Hugo qui parle. Après, non, c'est impossible. Il n'y a que Emilio et Hugo, et plus Arthur.
Cette année,
Oh, mais sinon, on ne se passe pas. Non, et puis, mais vraiment, ça. Et sinon, on profite pour parler d'autres choses. Par exemple, tu as regardé.
Puisqu'on est en plein organisation du log.
Oui, alors. Toi,
l'histoire de formation.
Oui.
On voit un peu des mails là.
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
On voit les mails, c'est
Ouais, je sais. Mais ça va. Ah non, c'est sur YouTube, ouais. Ça va, mais c'est quoi?
Non, mais déconnecte-toi du réseau temporaire.
Je vais faire même mon client d'email, mais je suis en train de regarder.
Si tu veux, on peut le lire pour toi.
C'est gentil.
On peut te faire la traduction vocale.
Et toi, Enrico, tu l'as regardé pour le request, enfin la mise à jour plus ou moins de cette histoire de chapitre des crédits pour tenir compte de tes remarques. Ouais, je peux vous la montrer sur mon ordi si vous voulez. Donc, en gros, ce que j'avais fait à la base, c'est que j'avais rajouté. Enfin, j'en avais marre d'avoir ce Redmi V1, V5 qui traînait dans un coin, alors qu'il y avait pour moi, la démarche importante, c'était rassembler tout ça. Donc, j'avais mis ça là-dedans. Je crois que ça a été plus plaisir à ça comme idée. Et ensuite. On va inverser alors. Eh bien, oui.
Enlève le fil de ton ordinateur.
C'est plutôt qu'il faut les mettre en avance la dernière plutôt que la.
Le quoi?
Il faut les mettre en avant la dernière version plutôt que la première.
Voilà. Et donc, ce que j'ai fait sauf que je trouvais que le problème, c'est que le début du chapitre se lisait de manière linéaire et que ce n'était pas adapté à renverser entièrement l'ordre. Donc, on avait dit, on n'a qu'à faire les vieux crédits dans l'ordre chronologique et les nouveaux crédits dans l'ordre inverse. All right. Okay. Sorry, guys. So, I think we're going to switch topics because I would like Emilio to be here for the other one. So, it's even cooler. Let's start with a quiz. If I find it. All right. So it's not very hard. Okay. So I think Pierre-Marie probably doesn't have the right to answer because I probably already asked him. I'm not sure though. Anyway, so I have a section called S. I define three things.
So I could also define a tactic, but I thought, okay, let's not be too nasty. An inductive definition and a section variable.
Ou encore tes belles.
Ah. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. And then I'm wondering which of these three constructions I can qualify using the name of the section. So maybe none, maybe all of them, maybe some of them.
I didn't even know it was possible.
All of them.
None.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what I would
At least
expect,
one of
but-
them.
So let's start with the first one. First one succeeds.
Second one, yes. No. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And last one, no.
No.
Indeed. So I find this a bit strange. And okay, so that was the quiz. I'll put it in back in the context.
When you're in the goal, the variable names get qualified, right?
No.
No. Only the local ones get qualified.
This is something we discuss a lot, but never acted.
Yeah. So exactly. That's the
This is
That's why I have
we
questions.
wanted you to be present.
exactly. Yeah, I'm not saying I discovered anything, but I have questions. So the context of this is there is a feature request that is fairly old now about the possibility to create unnamed sections. Okay, so I started to work on this, and I wasn't aware of the examples I showed. So I thought, oh, this is going to be 5 minutes. Somewhere there is a name, I put the name option, and that's it. And it took me a week. And then I realized I'm not sure what the design we want, or what it should be.
Goal is unnamed, so you can have a unnamed section, but locally you have a unnamed section.
Yeah, I don't want to do horrible hacks. Okay, I should have mentioned it. So if things need to have a name for the design of the system, then I'm not going to implement unnamed sections. But then if they don't, we can. So I don't know. So the questions I have on this is, so this is more of a discussion or a reminder of history, because I don't know the story behind that. But when I was a kid, I thought modules were namespaces in code, but I never realized sections were too for some of the constructions, but not all.
So it's not named spaces in the sense that after the section is
Bah,
closed,
No, il est pas.
it disappears.
Yes, but so it's not the same notion of namespaces as modules, but it's still, it's still a notion of, it has an impact on the name resolution.
Yes.
So then what can they contain? So we can do the same experiment with the tactic, for instance. We put a tactic in a section, and then we call it. Does it work or not? Pierre-Marie, you have to answer this. And so what is the design we want, basically? And so if the answer, so depending on the answer, we may want or not to implement anonymous sections. So of course, it's easier if they don't have any impact on the name resolution, then it's fine to have anonymous sections. There is no problem. If it's allowed to prefix by the section type, then we can put a special case when the section has a name, but not that it generates a name unnamed, but rather than you cannot prefix these ones. That could make sense. So maybe this is first a question for Hugo, because I don't know exactly the history. So it seems to me like it's a bit inconsistent in terms of design, but maybe I don't know where it's coming from. So was it allowed to qualify everything, and then we removed some of the things? Was it never allowed to qualify anything, and we added some of these? I don't know. So I was curious to see what was the direction we were taking on this.
I can't tell about the original design in the sense it has not been designed in some sense. It came some practical without a big plan, let's say, spontaneously. But I find it convenient to have names, especially to solve the problem of a section variable, which is clear, don't rename, the name is reused. This is a way to make the difference between a goal variable and a section variable.
No, but you
And
can,
so-
what, how?
Sorry?
How do you make the difference?
But with the section variable being a global,
But you can,
locally a global constant, like a global constant.
but you cannot prefix the section variable.
Currently, no. But this
No.
is a design I think would be, which I would find natural.
So I think what you don't, what you didn't clarify in your conversation is that Hugo is actually talking about a design that is not implemented yet,
Yeah, okay.
where he would like to also be able to name the section variable.
Because when you say it's natural, but when I talked with developers and showed these examples, most of the developers I talked to were not expecting, like Jean said, were not expecting that you
Well,
could prefix.
it's not entirely logical because you couldn't have that the same definition or inductive with the same name
Exactly.
before the section.
Yeah.
So the namespace is the namespace of the enclosing module. If you can't have two of them, it doesn't make sense to qualify it with the section because it's in the same namespace as the
Yes.
enclosing one.
Since at the end of the
Yeah.
section, it will blow up.
No, it's even worse. It's even worse than that. So before I correct it, so they previously they wouldn't. So if you have an inductive before the section and one inside, they would not have the same kernel name
At the beginning.
because the kernel name was containing the section path.
Mm-hmm.
But the part of the kernel that adds it in the module structure that contains both.
Oh, it
they
blows
will
up at the end
complain-
of section.
Yeah. So you will complain about the label being
That was my point.
destroyed. So yeah, it doesn't seem to be. So it's a bit surprising to me. But,
But no, it does not happen anymore, right? Because section names are no longer part of the kernel.
so now they have the same kernel name, so it fails even earlier. But then still there is no real point in prefixing for these constructions.
We can give a meaning also to it, is that if you don't, the full name, let's say, so you can show some example.
Yes, sorry.
So you have
Yes.
you have bar on foo. We could say that top.bar is a discharge version, top.s.bar is a version without discharging over the variable of the section. So there are different types, so we can give a meaning to them. Currently, only the name in the section is available. So here you don't have an example of bar or foo depending on the variable. But if bar or foo depend on the variable, you would have locally to a section a statement which is not the same after the discharging.
But the enclosing module, what would it contain?
The enclosing module at the end of the section.
No, I mean inside the section. Yeah.
What remains after the section is only the.
Yeah, but today, as soon as you define something, it's seen
Yes.
as a field of the module, right?
Is it?
You have s.foo.
Not really, but
You
No,
have
yeah,
S.foo.
it's not as it
On your
Because clearly the computation are done at the end.
yes, it's done at the end.
If we do
Yeah,
the
but,
computation of the discharging dynamically, for instance, you could have check s.foo and check top.foo, which
Yeah,
would have different types.
But then when you close the section, you lose one of them, right?
Yes, sure.
so you substitute the names, or
It looks like a
What-
clear
No,
under
you discard.
clear under the carpet.
but what do you do in definitions that mention
Yes.
the
or tactics.
locally qualified name?
Yeah, tactics.
If I do a definition. I took all the names. Equals s.foo. So maybe foo is okay. In inductive, I don't know, but okay. If I understand correctly, so then you close the section. What does it do?
No, what I think
Well,
what
it's
you do
sufficient.
means
It
that
is a
you
general-
no longer need to end the section, to wait for the end of the section. You, at each time you do a definition, you introduce both the section name, which is the current one, the one we all know, and the computed one, the discharged one, directly into the module.
Yes.
What does it become at the end? That's a question.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, here the name is not valid outside of the section, so you need to do something about it. So I guess you
It's
substitute by the real name.
the discharge.
Yes, yes.
It's really what we do, but except we would do it a lot sooner.
No, it's not. No, it's not the
Yeah, but it
discharge
means-
because this is a
it now
definition.
means that F cannot be
Yeah.
top dot something because
If
it
you look at
depends on
the end of
something
the
in the
section,
section.
F is no longer S point bar.
You have S top.s.f, which refer to S bar.
My point is that at some point,
Refer
yeah,
to top bar.
exactly. So you need, okay, so, yeah. So when you build top.f, you need to substitute
Yes.
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
at some
This is what the
point.
discharge is doing already.
Yeah, but then you have two names that refer.
Look at the definition F after the end of the section. At this point,
Yeah,
I mean, even
printf.
yeah, but this is okay. Yeah, the name tag.
Yeah, but
It's
that-
not even substituted.
no, but it's not the problem. Now is you have two names, and one of them can only be defined locally because it depends on the local variable. So what does top.f mean in that context? Because now there is top.s.f and top.f
No.
Yes,
There, yeah.
inside the section.
yeah,
Inside or
Inside
outside?
section,
Inside.
inside the session.
Ah, yeah.
Inside the session.
often as a
What
user, I would have liked to be able to use the discharge name rather than closing the section and reopening it just afterward, just to get the fully
Yeah.
quantified one.
Sometimes you need to do that.
I mean, can you write top.bar inside the section?
I don't think so.
Uh,
No, it does not exist.
It doesn't exist yet.
It's
But that's
Probably
what
not.
Hugo would be suggesting to change.
but is it top? Is it top? It's
Yeah,
not top. It's not top. Yeah.
I've already,
It's, I don't think it's top.
Or,
So let's put another-
or section, I guess you're,
Sections.
sections?
Let's do this.
Okay.
in the past, I've already been bothered by the fact that top exists, but
This?
does not really exist, and sometimes you cannot refer to it.
No, it doesn't. Okay.
And what about just top?
No,
You are inside the module,
top
so-
exists,
so top,
or the system changed recently. Yeah. Okay, so it doesn't exist. But isn't it an XY problem? Because, okay, today you cannot reopen a section. So I very easily see why you need to address
You cannot reopen.
the other one. Because if you close it, then
And you need to have to repeat the
it's a
variable.
bit.
Yeah,
But
that's
if you
an
could,
issue.
but if you could reopen the section.
No,
maybe
even if you could reopen the section, you would not I don't expect COP to automatically put again all the definition of the variables.
Yes, like locales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. If we had this, then we don't need to.
Yeah, but it's a lot more complicated.
Let me say that I think this is an epiphenomenon that what we're seeing. We should probably try to think in terms of the big picture of the section mechanism that needs to be rehauled at some point. So this is really like, this is an important detail.
No, I agree.
Before committing to any solution, we should rather think what we want to do with sections. This is really just a consequence of what we have
So-
today.
Very good. What do we want to do with sections?
Good question. Vast question.
There is an issue open about what is the future of sections, but I don't think it received much.
No, it received a lot of
Yes?
solutions. Yeah, and even comments from lean developers.
But that, but that was about context handling and separation of proof context and section context. So it's
It received a lot of comments, but it did not produce a lot of conclusions. We don't have a story to that.
But what drawback do you see to what I propose?
What you propose is too macroscopical as a change. We really need to rewrite the whole section because it's known for being the source of so many bugs and whatnot.
Okay.
We could solve locally the issue, but it's just postponing the
No,
real
here you are talking about implementation. Hugo was talking about
the design.
language surface language.
I'm also talking about design. We don't know what there are a lot of problems we don't know how to solve. Should it be should it just be some kind of macro system? Should it be trusted? Should it be this? Not quite implementation, rather design.
Okay.
Okay, but for
For me, it's not a strong claim, but I would not mind to have section in the kernel. I mean, I'm okay if the majority is against having section in the kernel to have the kernel smaller, but I don't think it's so big, so critical, so big.
Discharge, I mean, cookies.
So big rules to have an operation to generalize constant over another set of constants.
Currently, it's already in the kernel somehow with Trust library. So.
Currently, it's in between, so
it's in the TCP, but not the kernel.
Yes, it's not physically in the kernel, yeah, but it's definitely trusted.
It's already
Yeah, we trust it, so it's as if it was in the kernel.
It would be better if it was in the kernel.
Because people don't realize necessarily that.
I mean, you could
It's in the
you could
TCP.
do the you could keep it out of the kernel by doing the discharge eagerly.
Yes.
And just saying that section is a mechanism for inserting default arguments and keeping them implicit.
There were a discussion precisely related to Lean. They go back. They went back.
Yeah, but did you read the issues that they point to? I read them, and it doesn't seem very fundamental. Okay, they had some printing problems because it was displaying these arguments that should be hidden.
Yes, okay, they
so
screwed up
you
the
have to-
implementation, and
Jean?
it happens.
Just to be sure, what you are saying is that at QED time, only the discharge version will be checked by the kernel and not the local one.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So it seems compatible with what you were saying to give access to immediately to the
Yeah,
discharge version.
S dot bar would be the one where top dot bar is applied to the variables of the
Yeah.
section.
Yeah, that would be a
No,
good way
the
to do it.
opposite.
So it would just be an alias.
No.
Sorry?
Top would be already discharged, while
Yeah,
S dot bar
top dot bar would be the final version, so it
Yes.
will be the applied one,
no.
because you no longer have variables.
No.
Yeah,
So it's not applied.
So then it's not, doesn't.
Okay,
It's a terminology.
Yeah, you produce the term with the quantifiers, and then inside the section you apply them with
Yeah,
default.
that's why
default
I'm
arguments.
saying it is applied, because
But the applied one
variables
is
are not no longer
Yeah,
just names, they are
What they were saying is
Be
that
applied in the final term.
S dot bar could really be a notation for
Yeah, just define
top
it as
dot
it
bar
is.
Yeah,
applied
so,
to full bar bar.
I
This is all done. You can do it in principle. You could do it all in the display and the parsing and display,
Yeah.
which keeps it out of the kernel.
okay. So what I hear is that for some designs that we may have in mind, we may need section names. So we shouldn't
But I think
remove
it's
them
even
to
orthogonal. I don't know.
regarding. It's a bit orthogonal. I mean, the problem is then in the design we have in mind, what would we do if the section is anonymous?
yeah, we don't need section name.
No, you don't need section
Yeah,
names.
I know. So I was saying S dot bar could be a way, but I would prefer to have the short name bar there, be a
It's,
notation for top dot bar applied to
Okay.
And
variable
if you want the discharge name, you type top.
But
top
do,
dot,
so we would disallow this?
Yeah, I think it is
I would.
orthogonal.
It is orthogonal,
Whether
so
you don't need
section
that
name can
to
be-
implement
can
the
be-
So sorry guys, I'm
No,
a poor engineer, okay? I want to do something locally that is not incompatible with the big picture. Okay, that's my goal. If we keep this and we remove section, and we add the possibility to not give a section names, it becomes a bit, it's possible, but it's,
In the current implementation, but it doesn't mean that general would be.
yeah. So what should I do?
Well, what's the use case? Why would you need to disambiguate? I mean, you are shadowing top dot something.
You
you
know,
cannot shadow it, so-
You need to have a qualified version because you might have a proof variable
Yes, exactly.
that is named bar, and then if you want to refer to the global constant, you need to be able to qualify it. Now it's kind of annoying since ultimately it's going to end up in the module. It should be qualified by the module, because if it has to be qualified by the last section that was opened, then if you ever do any kind of refactoring and you have to introduce a new section to factor some declarations, then you have to change the reference to be the internal name of the section, and it's going to be a bit of a mess. And it's a bit silly because the intent, for all intents and purposes, the globals are part of the module, and the real name is the kernel name is qualified by the module. So what would make more sense would be to be able to qualify by the defining module path from the get-go, regardless of whether you're in a section or not. And then the section name is just purely a mechanism to make sure that the section and end section match.
So you mean even section variables like these are here, you should be able to qualify by top.
So section variables are essentially assimilated to prove variables. So that's why you can't qualify them here. And if you keep the same logic, then you shouldn't be able to qualify them. And you're not allowed to if you
Yeah, but for me, top.bar would be the D# version, not the section one. So
Yeah, that's what you mean.
I'm not sure that's what George meant.
Oh, for the disambiguation?
The check top.bar fails right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Write the fail in the beginning of the line.
You should clarify whether it's the generalized one or the local.
Yeah, indeed. I was
So I guess the nasty question would be what happens if you have something like a local declaration that depends on a section variable, and then you open a proof and then introduce a new variable that masks the section variable. How does Coq print that local definition if you or if you insert that local definition? How does Coq print it?
So you mean today?
Well,
Yeah,
you first need
today.
to clear the section variable that's already in the context to do that. Otherwise, you cannot intro on the same way.
Yeah, the only masking you can have today is between a definition and a
Okay, so
variable.
you're not allowed to mask a
section
section
variable,
variable.
no.
Okay.
Except if you clear it.
Yeah.
And then it can mask.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
And
Yeah,
then, fine. I don't know.
we should definitely make a difference between introduced variables and section variables. This is the root of all evil in all the problems we have regarding variable leaks.
Yeah, but since both are named, you could also just forbid any masking scenario.
Well, that's I remember clearly adding code at some point to the SSReflect plugin to disable, prevent users from accidentally clearing section variables because.
I feel that you're trying to reduce the space of possibilities for the users, while we could have a richer design for a very low cost. So,
what are we reducing?
Forbidding clear, for instance, on the section level.
Yes.
But sometimes it's a feature to restrict the language.
I agree with both of you because sometimes something, when you want to do induction on something, and then you get a too generalized thing because for by chance you qualified over the variable diversion section, then you're basically screwed if you cannot clear. So it's kind of a mess in both cases.
So I was told I need to conclude. What should I do?
Yeah.
Locally.
Your point is
1 hour, I mean.
But it seems that many sections are okay.
Yeah.
In any case,
Okay.
for
In
the
any case,
So-
at worst, we use a generated name if we need one.
No, but this, I mean, no
Then-
way.
then
No
you
way.
don't-
This is a horrendous hack. I mean,
Okay,
we did
then
this
you
many
stop,
times.
then you stop.
No, there is another possibility, which is you allow unnamed sections, and in this case, you cannot prefix.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes
I-
sense, I think.
But
Yes.
We already
the
have
printer-
unnamed lemmas. We could
Yeah,
have a name
exactly.
section. I mean, it's not worse.
what do you mean, like generating the name?
Yeah,
unnamed?
name section.
We should rather remove the other hacks than adding more. I mean, we even failed to write a function that generates a fresh name for girls. Okay? So,
But anyway, just for uniformity of syntax, I would rather be against a name section
against unnamed section.
for uniformity of
Yeah,
syntax.
with I have mixed feelings about it.
So we can stick to the current status quo before doing anything. Maybe.
But then I close the
First,
issue.
fix the section, and
Let's
then
open as a wish.
consider.
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
actually, what's
Let's move on to the next. Oh, thank you. So the conclusion is let's wait.
No, fix the section.
Yeah, just pick the section and then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, you lack the proper motivation. I mean, you said there's some confusion. Why should I remove it? It's not so clear. I mean, what do we gain by removing the name?
No, okay,
I guess it was
the point. The starting point is the like our names for section required or not. And then, I mean, there is this thing that if you can qualify, it's like we cannot have unnamed modules because when you use them as prefixes.
No, but I understand the design questions, but actually from the implementation point of view, allowing named sections, do you have use cases?
Yeah, but then I can close the issue. But
Well, there's it's fairly common to have a module that contains a section, and it's a bit silly to name both the module and the section.
So often people give the same name, by the way, which, when they prefix, they probably don't realize.
Yes,
that's the name of the section.
exactly.
What I don't like in the current status is that we can qualify some of the constructions, but not.
Yeah, okay, then that's something.
Of course, you could fudge this by having an unnamed section implicitly be named with the same name as the enclosing section or module.
There's a rationale that I use to decide whether you
This makes different kind of fact. Okay.
So you don't actually need to generate a name. You have one.
But then you cannot have several of them.
Why not?
No, now you can.
No, not
No, but you use
sequence.
No, you can. No, you can. You used to not be allowed to define two sections in sequence with the same name, but now I think it's allowed.
Yeah, seems we found a way to support a named section.
So thank you.
Apparently a name, but actually named.
My question wasn't so much about how to generate a name. But, yeah, never mind. It's also good.
So we're going to name them by counting in PN arithmetic.
So the other topic. So we switched the order because I wanted the reader to see this. So this is some work we've been doing with, I don't know, it started with Emilio, then Enrico, then I took over, Vincent helps, many people involved. And so the motivation is roughly, so okay, this is a sub part of the work on preparing support for LSP, cleaning up the STM and so on. So the motivation for this work, from my point of view, so which may be a bit different from what was the original motivation, is I would like to be able to parse a code document without having to execute the document. So of course we have extensible parsing with our defined notations. So I think it's fine to execute the addition of rules in the grammar when you meet a notation command, but I would rather not have to run unification, for example, just to parse. Which was, I mean, this separation was unclear today. So the point is, I hope it could make the life of external tools easier. Like you want to color the syntax, you don't need to implement hierarchy unification or call it. And also, of course, I hope it could make the STM model, the interaction model we have today is, I think, is designed in a spirit where, I mean, you would like to have a quick parsing of the document, and not having to wait for potentially long execution, and only in the second phase have a delegation heuristics execute where you want and so on. So I think this separation of concerns is something that would be a nice property to have.
Well, it has to be said that the real motivation was to fix many bugs.
Yes.
Which actually happened because it's
yes.
You mean parsing as a separate from elaboration?
Yes.
So
The transfer to
Yeah, really
Well, this is
parsing.
a really separate.
because there's parsing, type checking, and proof checking, right?
Yes.
Okay, so,
So,
have
but
three.
today-
So you want 3 phases.
Yeah, even yeah.
Not really.
Type checking is elaboration?
Yes.
Yeah, not really. There are only two.
Yeah, today.
From this point of view, there are only parsing and execution.
Yes, I mean, we don't want parsing a sentence to depend on the elaboration of a previous sentence. Yeah.
So just to say what we've done so far, and yeah, I would need feedback on the next steps. So that's the point of the talk. But I'm giving a bit of context. So one PR that has had 2 ancestors, I think, so, long history, was just about separating the states. Because of course, if you want to separate the phases, you need to know which data you want to thread on which of the phases. You want to have an explicit separation of the parsing state. So this is merged, and I think it's almost fine. So then you have a problem, which is that in proof blocks, we have a different grammar because we have proof nodes. So, so basically, the parser needs to know where are the proof blocks. So what opens a proof and what does not. And today, the vernacular language doesn't let you know statically easily where proofs are open and closed. So of course, the parser that's the part where the parser has to trigger execution to realize if a proof after the fact if a proof was open or not and adjust the current grammar. So I wanted to simplify this. It had been started by other people a long time ago. So there was only 1 or 2 code paths that were remaining. So there was add morphism and so on. So this I took care of it. It was easy, in fact, to make it always or never open a proof. I don't remember, but not depending on unification problems. But and then the only remaining problematic construction was instance. So instance had
I mean, program isn't an issue?
no program never opens a proof.
Next obligation.
Then you have to do next obligation, and then it always opens a proof. So you can know statically. Yeah, it was that was also a theory. But,
So what happens when you use program and you don't do next obligation?
you don't have a proof.
The definition is not finished.
So as usual, you can do
Sometimes
anything.
it forgets that you started a program.
Yeah, but at least
I think
from
at the
the
end of a
Okay.
module, or if you do proxy, it will tell you you haven't solved the obligation.
hopefully. Yeah.
At the end of the section,
No, but
I don't know if I
the
can
same
detect
for-
that.
so some stuff will happen, but at least from the parsing point of view, it's clear. You should not be parsing a proof. If you write a tactic, it will fail. It will not parse, but you don't have an open proof anyway.
Yeah, but at which time do you know that the program symbol is available?
This is another problem.
This is another
It is
problem.
important.
So this problem is real because it's not well parameterized in some sense, but it doesn't change anything from the parser point of view. You don't need to know what are
And the program keyword is always available.
The symbol is in the elaboration phase
Yes.
where you resolve names, you do lexical analysis and stuff. But parsing, you just pass an ident. You don't know if
Yeah.
it's this the program.
Maybe it's
one or-
unbound, but it's fine.
Okay.
But I agree there is a problem, but it doesn't show up yet. It's when we refine the stage with names. And things like
Yeah,
that, it can be a disaster.
know if it is there or not,
And
yes.
10 years from now or something, we'll have the problem. Not
One
now.
thing at a time.
Yeah, but baby steps.
And so instance had 2 problems. It was funny. So the other one was okay. The other one had been addressed already. So partially addressed. So instance, when you use it, you can provide a body or not. Okay. When you do it, so you can use colon equal or just dot the type. When you provided the body, then it was basically depending on unification, type class resolution, and things like that to know if the proof was open or not. So if there are remaining holes, it would open a proof. Otherwise, it would just define the instance. So this was basically making a higher than unification leak in the parser, in the grammar. So that wasn't so nice. Fortunately, there was already an option. There was introduced quite some time ago. I think maybe 3 versions ago, something like that. But it was off by default. It was on by default. Sorry, the option was enabling this behavior of depending on unification, and it was still on by default. So the first step I did was to turn it off by default, and because we have this this other flag that prevents nested proofs by default, nested lemmas, so you can still do nested lemmas, but you have to enable them explicitly. So this made the transition very much easier here because you catch the problem much more locally. So when the instance now is no, sorry, this one, no, it's another one. Sorry, I'm anticipating. But okay, so here I just made by turning this option, I just made it so that when you provide the body, it has to
be complete.
It has to be complete. Exactly. And if you really want, to provide a partial body, then you have a few different migration strategies. The closest to this is you use instance without a body, and then you do refine and you put the partial record.
It was the implementation.
Yeah, this is really doing the same as far as I know. But unfortunately, so on ComCert, for example, Xavier made the remark that this separation, the fact that he was providing a partial record had a meaning. Was that you specify the definitions and you want to hide a bit the proof obligations.
Sure, but you can't put program before instance.
So that's what I did. So this is maybe not fully satisfactory because this is cleaning up the opening proof code path, and programmer instance has a lot of problems with the termination of the proof, a lot of hacks at the termination time. So I'm pushing problems a bit farther, but okay. But anyway, and we have yet another transition strategy, which is we could introduce an attribute to the instance command that we call refine, for example, that would always open the proof, even when you provide the body. And if it turns out to be complete, then you just have to do QED without any proof argument. So, but of course I couldn't apply this to ComCert or any other development we track because the attribute doesn't exist yet. So, but we can still provide this to improve the migration of developments. And then there was the dual problem, which is what sometimes when you didn't provide the body, it would not open a proof sometimes. But this was a more specific case. It was just for trivial classes. So it's very easy to fix this one. You can provide a colon equal and an empty braces and an empty record. But it was slightly harder to detect where this occurred, and this is where the not allowing nested lemmas was key to get the error where it was really.
So it always worked to pass an empty bracket?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Even in older versions.
Yes. No, I submitted a crazy number of pull requests on on the developments we track, and all of the patches were already backward compatible or could be made backward compatible easily. So switching to program instance is a bit trickier because the naming strategy is different, and so it's a bit trickier. So that's done. So we are not far from the goal. But yeah, there is still a problem, which is, okay, now you see instance in the AST, but is it instance or program instance really? Because you have this global flag that is set program mode. So if you see an instance after set program mode, in fact, it's a program instance, but you don't see it very locally. So attributes provide a generic solution to this. What was a bit unfortunate is the program was not an attribute like the others for some reason, for reasons of complexity of the threading.
Just because computing the current set of default attributes is part of the parsing phase.
Yes, I mean you could call it a separate phase by itself, but the parser will depend on that. But it's fine. I mean this is trivial to do. This is the goal, I wanted to. So there is another. So this PR was a bit. Anyway, so this is making program a regular attribute, threading all the dependencies on program mode explicitly.
Some unexpected ones in cases.
Well, I removed stuff. There were some even more unexpected ones, but anyway. So it's changing. So this one is changing a bit the semantics of the set program mode flag, but I think it's okay, and the compatibility seems okay. So that's the current status. So we have all the ingredients to separate, to be ready for the separation. But what are the next steps? So the problem is that I turned the refine instance mode off, but I didn't remove it. And I would like to remove it because there is a whole piece of the STM depending on this code path, the so-called BT unknown, that we found out with Enrico is even more buggy than we thought. We already had low expectations. Do you remember? Basically, the DAG is completely. I mean, okay. We should remove this piece of code. Okay.
Cannot be implemented.
Okay. And so here I have a question on more or less the policy, right? So this option was there in 8.9, but I would like to remove it in 8.10. And as far as I know, it has never been deprecated. I don't know why. I mean, it was introduced clearly with the spirit of this transition. But so I would like to have feedback on the potential exception to the usual policy on this one because of the trade-offs.
Can we deprecate it in a minor update to Coq?
Yeah, maybe we could do that too.
I mean, I changed the patch is one line.
Yeah. So the thing is, I don't care.
In a patch level release?
No, we forgot to deprecate it in the last version. Okay, let's put it like that.
The release manager.
No, I think it's a bit worse than that because it was on by default in 8.9.
Yeah.
So,
but even well,
I thought it
but
was just
in any case, this would be the release manager to decide.
So
if I was the release manager,
yeah, let me first ask the questions, and then if you can give feedback now or even offline. So then there is some work to do. There is some work to do on separating the. So today, if you take a command like notation, it has one interpretation function, and it does both the effects on the parser and the effects on the real execution and defining scopes and things like that. So we wouldn't, but it's not hard to separate the two. We just need to, because internally it's already separated. It's just that the vernacular interpreter doesn't see the separation, so we need to be a bit more precise. But then we have other commands that are going to be way more problematic, which require an import, also have effects on the parser. And here, threading this separation is going to be dealing with libobject, right? And here I think we could hack a bit, like tagging more specifically the action, separating the objects into things like that. But I would rather, try to get some courage and try to redo a bit the libobject thing. So we put more structure in it. And so maybe that would be the last thing I want to show.
You realize you need to track set as well. You need
set,
to track options.
Yeah, this is what I meant by Enrico by attribute elaboration needs to be part of it.
And of course, you can't tell whether a plugin parser actually tests the defined constants or not.
Yes, because just because the interface is going to become functional, so if the plugin wants to test anything, it's going to have to declare it. There is, for example, a patch that adds as the plugin interface a state attribute. This is not yet merged, but yes, I mean.
Yeah, I hope.
I'm a bit skeptical though. I'm not sure all this is worth because I think I'm a bit skeptical. Like,
can I finish the last thing? I would be happy to get feedback. This is 1 minute. So libobject, one thing I really don't find satisfactory about libobject is that we pretend to be fully generic and extensible, so that you can define your container object. You can define my module, but then when you see the reality check is the whole system hard codes the behavior of the containers. So if you define my module, it will accept the definition, but it won't work. So I don't know if you see the.
I'm saying I know sure it just pretends that because actually provides the interface to access the objects as provides the callback to register them.
No, but it's meant to be flexible enough to you can.
It's meant. Okay, so what I mean, I'm not sure it's meant to be like that.
Not like this, but it's meant like you can declare your module object. You can declare it.
Yeah, but you can only declare lifetime. So I don't think it's was meant to be
To implement modules.
variable, for example.
But
it is implemented.
modules are implemented like this, so I don't.
Oh, this is a different stuff, but this is because it's implemented over.
So I think,
over
okay,
something.
what I wanted to say is that, of course, if you want to separate the effects and so on require and import, you need to traverse objects and so on, like search needs, like name substitutions in modules need. So I would rather not write again this iterator, but invert the control and have explicit containers in the lib object.
I would like to make a remark.
But this is a lot of work.
This code is, the code of the object is 20 years old or something like that.
I don't know.
LibObject?
It hasn't been touched since then, no?
It's been touched, but
When was that introduced? Let's have a look at the.
Yes.
Does it still have Polish comments?
No, because I already did that. I already did
There is a LibObject.
I already did a parser by lobotomizing COP. That was 20 years ago. So you might want to look at this code. It's probably somewhere in the
So what were you saying that you're not so convinced?
I mean, like for me, the motivation was more to have this functional interface with some bugs, this typical parts in a tenant write state. I'm a bit skeptical. Like for example, they're going to be able to make required to work without having to execute. The people put required in the middle.
I know, but okay. Okay.
And users want that, like Adam. So yeah, I mean, I'm a bit skeptical. But other than that, I think the cleanup is good. I mean, so anyways, we are out of time. But yeah, when somebody wants to do a last remark.
Yeah, I just want to say that maybe for most of the files, requires are on top. So maybe it's not so.
No, but I would.
These we could execute.
Yeah, but having one exception means you have to keep the entire code path to trigger execution at parsing time, and this would.
But this is not so bad. Sorry, this is for example in some experience. Then it's supported by that. You just keep a callback. Of course, like the current implementation we have, maybe it's not the best because of the scheduling and some other stuff, but in principle, this is not so complicated.
But also the user interaction is not so great.
I have to say sometimes like we say, no, nested lemmas. Come on, we are talking about an
No, I'm not saying that.
So of course, it maybe if we didn't do at first the right design of the thing, of course, this is not like the Rosetta Stone to implement nested lemmas properly to implement like.
I think independently of the implementation problems of the STM, independently of that, I think if you want to support a good interaction model, it's kind of a problem that parsing executes the thing because it will take a lot of time.
No, because actually it says when you are traversing,
but
the thing is right now with the backward traversers, maybe it's harder, but if you have like a forward traverser, the moment you decide you have to execute, it's just a callback, you need to retrieve the state. If you are threading that functionally...
But it's very expensive in general to execute a document. So,
well, that's the problem of the user, that's put in the middle are required, not mine.
Yes, but
that's my problem.
Is we are putting a notation in the middle of a file.
But I'm afraid, like for example, some people like these people doing these very expensive proofs. So I mean, I think like maybe in 3 years we'll go away. I just mean like short term, it looks tricky to me to tell like Adam they forgot some library and you tell them to redo all the proofs to put the required at the beginning.
No,
they're
but,
gonna say no.
Okay, this is not my proposal. My proposal is rather on the other way. Is try to support efficient parsing in any scenario.
Requirement. This is gonna take. This is okay, but this is still
okay. So maybe the question I had, we can answer later, is what about this option? Can I remove it in 8.10 or should I wait? The problem is if I need to wait, I don't care when the feature. I don't care when the features are shipped. I'm fine with the
because really we still have so much work to do that of course. In my opinion, it could be feasible to really complete this work, but the word is good. I mean, the word is first, all the cleanups you mentioned are super good.
Well, VT unknown, I can remove just by removing the option. I have the TR ready. But the problem is that then I can give a good transition story because the only thing you need to do is to, before porting your development, you turn the option on in 8.9 and then you fix the error, then you port. But it's not exactly the usual policy.
But the thing, and this week has discussed, the thing that VT unknown, this is really inconvenient to have to decide about this classification thing sometimes, because for example, it's not such a problem to have dynamic commands either that open a proof or not. Because for example, imagine you're doing a forward traversal of the document. So when you reach, but this is really simple. I mean, no. Of course, it's better, but here I'm getting the feeling that we are modifying other parts of the system just to work around limitations on the current design of some other part.
So this I disagree, because I mean, I agree and I disagree.
This is a fact.
I agree, it's hard to support today, and it could be easier to support by redesigning. But I think fundamentally, at some point, you're going to be less efficient, because if you need to execute stuff to parse, maybe your document manager is going to support that perfectly well, but you have to spend some time.
Efficient or not, but if the user is using a dynamic command, you execute, but it's not very well efficient.
No, but all the commands that are before the dynamic one need to be executed as well. So that's where the user experience.
This is a problem of the user. The user knows this command is expensive.
But here I think you're discarding. I mean, it's strange because I think you are discarding users more than we are.
What do you mean discarding?
Like I think using the dynamic commands.
It's a different issue. There are some commands with more cost. For example, if the user puts a required, then the user, of course, everything has to be checked. That's
I don't like. I
don't like that. I don't like that. But this is not a fundamental limitation. It's of course it's more convenient to have this way. But there is nothing wrong. For example, like the user, there is nothing wrong. Of course, by the design of other parts, we are limited. But there is nothing wrong, like in nested lemmas, and there is nothing wrong in partial execution. Technically, I mean.
But I agree with all this. I'm saying there is a fundamental thing, which is that execution is costly. Executing a document is costly, and you don't want for a good user experience. You don't want parsing to be very expensive.
But
so you don't need to.
It's not expensive. I mean, so it depends on what you put.
Executing a document is not expensive. In general, it is. Ask Adam.
No, you can parse. In Sagapi, usually we parse, and I parse many documents, and without executing anything.
Yes, but as soon as there is a requirement.
Today, I mean, it works. I mean, there are some problems with the, of course, because the classification is has to be consistent. But if the classification is okay,
if there is a notation in the middle of your file.
Yeah, but many files today, of course. But this the user. I mean, this the user knows. Of course, I will agree. It will be better. I mean, like.
You expect the user to know that if I put a notation,
that instance will trigger execution.
Yes, sure. You're modifying the parser. I mean,
but instance. I mean, the user puts instance. Do you really think they will expect the parsing to become 100 times slower?
No, the parsing doesn't become slower.
Yes, because if you start to execute the whole document to know what the parsing state is after instance.
Because in order to understand it, then you
I don't
statics or not.
This is not an STM implementation thing. I agree. There are also problems.
Anyways, I just say, of course, I think there is still so much to do to reach this goal. So for the now we are stuck. Okay, I think we agree. For the short term, we are stuck on supporting and executing with parsing until we clean up all this. Okay, if you can clean up required in 2 months, I will be very impressed.
No, but VT unknown, I already have the PR ready. It's gone, and the only thing I remove is this option.
Yeah, but you still have checkpoints. I mean, but you still have all the checkpoints for the VT now.
The VT now.
We're talking about VT now, not VT.
No, I'm talking about VT unknown.
But unknown gives you no improvement. I mean, you still have VT now. You still have like parse like execution to this point.
Yes, but not for instance.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, but okay. It's a VT unknown. But
the VT unknown code path is more broken than the VT now.
Yeah, has problems. I know where it's at. I tried to get it.
So I'm trying to improve the user experience. I mean, that's my only goal.
It's not VT unknown just uses back. It doesn't improve the user experience in the sense it's still if you put annotation or a required, you still.
Yes, but today when you put instance, the whole DAG and thing are screwed up.
That's a different problem of implementation. I mean,
so I think
the same. It's a problem of implementation.
Yeah, but I think there are two things. One thing which is fundamental, we would like to have no VT now, no VT unknown. This is the fundamental part. It's not related to STM. It's really separation of things. And then there are, on the path to there are steps that we can take now that are also good because STM has problems.
My only comment is it's not clear to me. Is an ultimate goal to forbid execution for the parsing. I agree that this is a very unstandard thing to do, but who knows in the future if people come up with sections or with, I don't know, or with some kind of notation that needs to access like deeper part of the environment. So I'm not sure this is a per se a thing like it's good. I mean, my point of view is more great. Of course, it leads you to a simpler architecture will be great if we can have it. But on the other hand, if we are going to give away some features, in order to have this, I think we should redesign the part that is doing the execution to be able to have this control.
Today, I mean, there is a lot of work to clean up.
Yeah,
but it's not really.
But I mean, like taking as a dogma, like separate parsing from execution, I'm still not so convinced. So I want to say my personal opinion. I could imagine.
But we should clarify this because I'm going to spend 6 months at least on this.
Yeah, this is what I tell him. I'm not sure. Yeah, well, of course we can learn. Well, you know my opinion. I clarified to you 20 times. I mean, my opinion, is we should really start from the board again with all this asynchronous processing, because we don't have like threading in OCaml and many other things, so we really need a DTD resign. So I wouldn't. All these cleanups are okay, but up to a point, I mean, so this is what I'm expressing now. I think we should think a bit more globally before taking as a dogma. Let's do this.
So are you saying that removing VT unknown and the
No,
option?
this is okay. I think this. As much as you can do,
as
much as you can do, so enough. But my point is about the final goal of let's separate parsing from execution. Will be great to have, but my point is, in order to have that, we are going to remove some features.
Not
we are
that
going to
I
limit what we can do, then maybe it's not worth it.
What are we?
Likely it's worth it. I mean, if you make me bet, I bet it's better to have this separated.
I don't think any existing feature would have to be removed, like, apart from the instance, which was. But other than that, I don't see.
Requiring this stuff.
No, but cleanups. But removing features, I don't think so. And then maybe you could prevent some designs that we could imagine otherwise. But I cannot.
No.
You need to tell me.
So,
and then
my point is, let's not take implementation detail. My point is just what I mean, which is separate parsing from execution. Let's not take
this is not an
implementation detail as the goal.
No, but separation of phases is not an implementation detail.
It's an architecture. For me, it's almost implementation detail.
No, it's almost an algebraic property of the language or something.
Yes, exactly.
But Talk is a funny language.
But we're trying to improve it.
Yeah, okay.
We are trying to make it
Yeah, but maybe but this
Anyway,
is
I have
also
a
a beautiful
question.
thing.
You asked 15 minutes ago. What is the compatibility story for removing set refine in source mode?
It's not great, so it means what you will have to do for porting previous development.
Yeah.
You take the development in 8.9.
Yeah.
You turn the option off there.
Yeah.
You fix your stuff if you have problems, and then you don't have.
As long as.
And then you port, and then it's fine.
So what you mean is that if you
cannot-
want to have a compatible development, you add set refine in source mode to all of the existing development.
Yeah.
Is that
You have to release a new version for 8.9, I think.
why?
Because you need to turn it off.
No, you cannot turn it off in
No, you
patch
cannot do
release.
that.
No. I mean, sorry.
For the user.
I mean the user
For the
development.
to turn it off currently.
Yes, you can already turn it off in 8.9.
Of course.
Yeah.
But if you don't do it, that's why I mean you need to release it.
No. Well, my question: how does a library writer make a development that is compatible with?
You can still support. Yeah, I don't think that is not a problem.
Okay.
You need to deactivate the option. It was already existing, and in fact, I don't want it to exist anymore. So you just need to make the value the same in the previous version, and it will have the same behavior.
Anyways, my seeing this option is a really discouraged, I guess, because it's a big kind of fragile.
No, we forgot to.
Yeah, but this kind of fragile. I mean, of having it.
Yeah,
But the user doesn't.
Yeah,
knows that.
the spirit of the developers who implemented this option, I'm sure, was the transition I'm doing, but they kind of forgot to follow up on deprecating and things like that.
I'm good. And let's move on because it's over time and we are a bit late.
Sorry.
So more remarks? Okay, Hugo?
Thank you, guys. You want to? This is UGA. But you have a USBC? I cannot help you.
But usually there is one.
No, not today.
But
No, but this is USB-C, no?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have
Moi, j'ai le VGA pour.
This is USB-C, right?
No.
Is this
No,
too?
yes,
Is too?
no, it's broken.
It's broken. Okay.
They are broken?
Yes.
Okay.
What? No, but both? No. Also this?
Yes. The graphical board is broken for USB-C.
But it's not USB-C.
But that is
This is
USB-C.
No.
No, this is the.
What is
USB-C.
USB-C?
Non, USB-C, c'est les ceux que tu as sur les petits téléphones portables.
C'est ça, voilà.
C'est Thunderbolt, ça.
Ah non, c'est autre chose encore.
Alors, j'ai plus USB-C.
Non, mais t'en as pas, mais donc essaye ça.
Donc ça, c'est cassé.
Ah, ça marche pas.
Alors, c'est lequel que tu utilises? Ah, c'est
HDMI.
Ah, ben là, on est foutu.
Ah.
On est foutu.
Bon, c'est pas grave.
Mais c'est quoi? C'est une présentation? Parce que on peut même sur un.
Ah, là, il y a encore HDMI. Hein.
Il n'y a pas de
Oui,
câble.
mais on a le câble.
Il n'y a pas de.
Ok, si c'est un problème. Ah, il faut
Ce qui est rigolo, c'est que ça doit être converti
ok.
vers du numérique de l'autre côté.
On peut pas, il n'y a pas un coin avec les câbles.
Non, mais t'embête pas.
Et on
Il
sauvegarde
est en train de mettre sur
et
une clé.
Ah, ok. C'est une bonne idée. Parce que je sais pas.
En général, HDMI est.
On a déjà cherché hier, on a déjà cherché hier, donc c'est parfait.
Ouais, je ne sais pas si cette porte-là.
Pourquoi tu mets tout au féminin aujourd'hui, Enrico?
Pourquoi?
Ah, parce qu'on dit bien une porte, je vois pas le problème.
Oui, c'est vrai. Et il a dit la câble avant.
C'est normal.
Il voulait dire un port, mais.
Ça finit avec un E.
Ouais.
Ouais, c'est pas féminin?
Non.
Mais écoutez, si vous voulez, je réforme votre langue.
Le français,
Ça a déjà été
l'italien,
réformé.
l'allemand. Toutes les langues qui ont des genres pour les mots qui.
L'allemand, c'est assez compliqué.
Bon, en espagnol, c'est câblé, c'est masculin.
Et les pluriels en allemand sont aussi assez féroces.
En italien, c'est cavo, o, Enrico,
Qu'est-ce qui se déroule
masculin,
Tiens.
porta, a.
Du coup, j'aurais pas dû le débrancher.
Mais c'est mort. C'est un port comme maritime.
Ah, mais non, mais.
Qu'est-ce qu'il fait?
J'ai oublié.
On a.
C'est le lien de.
Ah, t'as pas de port
Non, il n'y a pas de port USB.
T'as acheté un PC, t'as les emmerdes des mecs.
Avec le poste de travail Coq, c'est très rigolo.
Donne-moi ça.
Yes, I can do that. Allez, tac.
Le chapitre 2. Et en plus,
Tac.
ce que je suis en train de consolider beaucoup plus, c'est le fichier Changes.
Tu as que des USB-C, c'est
Ouais,
ça?
Aussi,
même recharger.
tout ce qui concerne les trucs sur le moment. Et là, ce que j'ai fait, c'est qu'après le truc preset,
Personne veut merger ma pull request sur le fast name printing. Je l'avais pas mis sur le schedule, mais.
Il y a une bonne bounty.
De quoi, sur les binders?
Ouais, je sais pas, Maxime dit ouais, non, j'aime pas. Mais ça s'arrête à la discussion.
Moi, j'ai dit j'aime pas.
Ouais, j'aime pas.
Ah, ça devrait être bien, hein. La push, ça va être cool.
9078.
Maxime.
La partie.
Oui, c'est ici.
Dans l'ordre.
Voilà.
Anti-chronologique. Et d'intégrer
Ok.
aussi les données. qui
Okay, so do you want to start with this one?
Non, primitive d'abord.
Primitive, okay.
Ok. Bah, dans ce cas-là, je pense.
L'autre, c'est un fichier texte primitive. Primitive
Ah, c'est pas ça que tu veux?
Non.
Ah,
Le
ok.
fichier Emacs, enfin le point texte. Primitive projection. D'accord?
Il faut le builder.
Ouais, elles sont les voix du dossier secret. Là.
Il faut le builder. Là. Il faut le builder.
Pour le
là.
builder? Attends.
Non, c'est un point texte.
Donc, j'ai l'ouvre
En Emacs.
ça va?
C'est pas Emacs, mais.
Bon,
Ah, point .txt, ok.
Ah.
Ok. Plus grand, plus petit? Je sais pas
je
grandir
sais
ça.
pas, ça dépend si vous arrivez à lire. Mais...
C'est bon.
Bah, je sais pas si les gens sur leur écran.
Je sais
Bon, mais
pas
ça
si-
va.
On laisse comme ça, écoute.
So basically, it's a summary of a question raised several times on GitHub. I feel that the reason, so maybe there are recent developments that I'm not aware of. I don't know, but so maybe tell me. I think we failed to make progress on primitive projection for terminology question on the first side. That there are different ways to think at primitive projection. So there was a problem with the dot parenthesis notation. We don't know to bind it. There is a question. So there is a question of compact representation, and there is a question of positive versus negative types. So I think at the very beginning, if I remember the history, it was mainly compact representation, but progressively it became negative type. So then there were a compatibility level so that we can emulate positive type on top of the negative type. And this was, it started to be very confused at some time. And so basically my question, my question are, I try at some time to move part of the standard library, but I think it's applied not only to the standard library, but to all libraries, to move to set primitive projection, thinking that, oh, it would go directly, smoothly, but not, no. So one of the problem is that with compact representation, we lose some argument, the implicit argument, but I don't think that's a major problem. The major problem is a change to negative type. So I started to think whether we should not separate the question of compact representation, which was the original motivation, and which is a motivation of efficiency in particular, to deal with a project with a lot of algebra. From the question of negative types. So this is one of the question, so the rest of the question here is what can we start first with a terminology, with an agreement on the terminology, so that we know exactly what it means when we use the word primitive projection. What it means? Does it mean compact? Does it mean negative? Does it mean the dot notation? To try to separate each of them. So that's someone has.
So you want to go with compact?
Primitive is clearly both compact and negative, because that's what we have in the code. So when we say primitive projection, it's just an umbrella term for both properties. But indeed, we can just say compact and negative. I would rather advocate for negative projection as the thing we call primitive rather than compact. Compact is an implementation detail.
Yes, but we need a primitive field to represent it in a compact way.
Yes, compact requires negative.
No, requires explicit constructors in the syntax.
Does not require negative. Could be a positive and negative.
Yeah, it's true. You could have constructors that have a you need a primitive notion of constructor or a primitive notion of like we could do the very same thing for a constructor of inductive data types.
Yes.
But that would require channel representation, so that they are not functions anymore. They are built-in constructors where you have a definite so in some sense, okay, right. So it's not negative, but it needs to be like primitive in some. It needs to be
a primitive representation of some constant.
Yes.
This is what I mean by compact representation.
Okay, right.
Yes.
Well.
So then
we can remove the negative positive distinction. Yes, if we can agree on that.
Yeah, but then you cannot have a compact representation of projections in positive style. You would have a compact representation of constructors.
Yes, but that's not very surprising.
Yeah.
Well, unless
right. But,
unless you start implementing.
From the point of view of the user, it's very different, because if you write a record as a positive type, then you will expect the constructors to be not like it's the different trade-off. Like you will still get a pattern matching that contains redundant information all the way. So whatever. I mean, it's not very important.
George was about to say something.
Yeah, well, one alternative would be to have implement the calculus of implicit constructions.
Yeah, where are we with Cockstar? Long time.
I've been looking into that recently, actually, because I want a variant of it. Problem is the models are really horrible.
Yeah.
So you get compactness only for the immediate projections, not for any derived projections. Please get the full.
Implicit, you mean Michael Barras-Bernardo?
Yeah, so
if you want
decidability, change of the conversion, which is conversion is done on the implicit on the extraction of the term. It's independent of how you represent.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to have some way of saying that some arguments of some functions are implicit in the representation, so that then.
Yeah, but they are still there, right? In the term.
In Nikel's presentation, no.
Yeah, but if you want decidability, you need them to be there. The difference that it's like S-prop, you just don't check for convertibility.
Yes.
So then if you do that, you are essentially losing, you cannot, it's not like, they don't behave like parameters. They are, any application is convertible. So it's more like a shape irrelevance. I've been looking into that recently. And that's what they do in Acta. Well, but we're slightly diverging from the conversation, I guess.
Something that's not on that list is ETA.
Yes.
Yes.
But maybe it's it's down there.
Somehow I don't see why we don't. I mean, we should investigate how to have ETA also for positive types. So
isn't there a result saying that it becomes indecisible type checking?
Well, for some restricted positive types.
I mean, I'm talking about non-recursive types.
Yeah.
Okay, non-recursive.
And just
even that, I think, if you only have sums, like it's on deck alphas with sums is already problematic from that point of view, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, at least I think it should be investigated. So I have a claim. So it's not. I didn't check all details, but there is. I have a claim which is that positive conjunction and negative conjunction are equivalent when achieved with the ETA rules. So then we can simulate the check.
Yes.
What do you call equivalent?
Isomorphic.
Logically.
Logically isomorphic. That you have two maps which are which compose to identity.
Okay.
Definitionally up to ETA.
Yeah, but you have propositional ETA rules for positive products using independent determination.
Yeah.
So
yes.
So yeah, so when you're in pure world, then propositionally they are the same.
Yeah.
You can always prove.
Yes.
But that's not true anymore in presence of effects in general.
Yes, so why does it matter, the effect here?
Because thinking of one day where you might get a cockpit effect, then maybe it might be not a very good idea to try to enforce things that are not true in presence of effects.
Yeah.
First, try to not refute functional extensionality. And then we'll see.
Well. That's, it's not true.
So then with effect, you would remove some of the ETA rules. That's
with ETA rules are okay for negative pairs. This is always fine even in presence of effect. Okay, so that's fine. We just rather restrict dependent determination. In particular, if you try to enforce to have, if assuming it's possible to get definitional ETA rules positive sums, then this is going to be completely incompatible with the effects.
So with the effect, we would lose the correspondence between positive and negative.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, at least from a practical point of view, I was thinking that to take benefit of the development as they are, it seems better to continue thinking that match is a primitive operation for the type for which we want a compact representation of projection. If I have a record, currently it's defined from a match. If we want to have it, the projection to have them compact, we need to, with a smooth compatibility, with a easy compatibility. Currently, I don't know who moved to primitive projection.
Iris,
At least the standard library didn't. I think
Iris,
Matconf didn't.
Equations, does it seem that like all the time?
but even doing there, I mean the code is cluttered with a half-broken compatibility layer because it's neither compatible nor implementing the thing we would like to have if we're broken compatibility.
Sorry?
So we're just like in the middle of the river, and
as usual.
For compatibility, if you want to be compatible.
Yeah,
If you don't want to be compatible, it's working.
I think we
yeah,
should.
but we're not compatible.
No, but actually, we at some point we aimed at compatibility, and I think maybe in retrospect it was a bit of a mistake, although it wasn't clear. But maybe what we should aim for is easy transition rather than compatibility.
Yeah,
Like,
this is what I
it's not that you
I
put,
meant.
it's not that you put the flag on and everything works magically and becomes efficient. So, but you break things, but it's reasonably local and easy to fix. It would be already a good.
Vincent just reminded me why we couldn't try it in Matconf is because if you have anonymous fields, record, you cannot then, I don't know why, but you cannot.
The extraction used to be.
Which is actually linked to the dot notation. There is a pull request that Gaëtan restricts the dot notation to real projections. And my claim is that we should really go towards that thing, so that ultimately we can actually refer to p dot n, where n is an integer, so that you can actually refer to an anonymous field. That would allow you don't have to give a name to the projection.
Sorry.
I didn't see it that way.
Yeah, this is close to what I had tried that we had to revert. No? I think, but it was more for the printing side.
Yeah, but what you did was like there's a lot of interference between the code between various parts. I think we should strive breaking compatibility because we cannot solve the problem in a nice way. So I would advocate for breaking compatibility and providing easier ways that are to perform porting from the old from the positive recall to negative recalls. But at the same time, not being negatively affecting the quality of the code and the maintenance. Because come on, the unfold flag is horrible. It's horrible, really. This shouldn't be there.
I mean the Boolean in the kernel.
When you have a proj node in the kernel, you have a Boolean saying whether the printer should pretend it's an unfolded match or you should just
record delta so that it's compatible with delta iota because
those
solutions need delta plus iota.
Does fold put it back false?
But just to be sure I understand, if you don't want to be compatible, it seems like the very existence of the state primitive projection option doesn't make sense because you won't be able to do Smash. So why would you activate this flag?
Well, I think
you might want to still have a regular record that are not negative.
Yes.
Yeah, but what you want is an attribute on the record command.
That's what I mean. The fact doesn't make sense because you cannot turn a given record in.
We didn't have attributes back then.
But you could have been another command.
Yeah, but we had many commands.
It's the meaning of things, but.
You're talking guys about many plans, so I'm wondering, like, is this document in an issue? Is there like a project? Is there?
Yes. Can we have Can we have a thread to follow to a direction to follow?
Yeah, indeed.
I mean, for me, one of the directions should be typically to have all the standard library or all Matconf with primitive projections, with compact representation of projection.
So here we have a related...
At least for efficiency reason. This could be a goal.
But we have
and then following this goal, how do we proceed in a way which makes it feasible?
So one thing that Vincent and I have been doing is that as part of STLweek 2, we define a prelude where the basic connectives are using primitive projections. So that's another way we could do the transition for the standard library.
Yeah, but I think also like maybe there is another way, like this will be really soon, like maybe you could have a standard lake 2 is very radical, I understand, compared to, also it should be possible you could freeze a standard lake 1.0, you could call it whatever you want, and you could like you could have like in Vim files for people within the library, you could have actually a standard lib prime or 2.0. Well,
No,
I don't know how to name it.
It's easy. Minor versions. You could do 1.1.
1.1 actually goes. People could actually the two can live in parallel, though they cannot be loaded at the same time because they define conflicting interfaces.
Yeah, but somehow an objective is we want prod on SIG.
Yeah,
we want
disaster. Don't do that.
The point of a standard library is to allow intercommunication between other libraries.
Yeah, please don't do it.
No, but sorry, this I'm afraid like no logical language like in C++, you have Boost, you have different. I'm afraid like it's natural. The standard library is no more special than any other library. I don't see why.
Even for SIG, we're going to have problem because of template polymorphism, because we cannot define primitive record in prop. You will not get the protection. So people using SIG in prop, and there are a few, are going to have a hard time. So it's a very complex problem.
Yeah, it seems okay to me to offer the users the two versions of the library and then
I agree.
If they would be compatible,
then we're stay stuck forever with because we cannot break this stuff after analysis. We will break out the development.
No, we're doing.
I don't think SIG is the problem.
We fix it.
But really, no large scale language like they have many competing libraries all the time, and this is like fine. I don't see
that's not true in all languages.
That's true C++.
No, it's not true for Boost uses strings and vectors. Boost doesn't redefine the standard types.
Many containers are
no,
they have the folder from Boost.
I'm a Boost developer, and I know.
We don't do that.
Okay. So Boost didn't provide.
You said to go that there was only 5 minutes late. Like you are using all the time.
Yes, so at least I think what we should do in the short term is, so I think this objective is good.
That's a good objective.
Which objective?
That the standard library, to be able to move prod or SIG, even if there are maybe problems.
I don't think SIG is a problem. I don't see why. Why is SIG a problem? X in prop. Record in
SIG is
prop.
going to be wrong because there are people using SIG in prop.
Yes.
What do you mean?
Yes.
Like by template polymorphism, they drop SIG into prop because the first argument happens to be a prop.
And so what's the problem with that? With primitive, with regards to primitive predictions.
You cannot do that you cannot do that with primitive projection. Am I right?
Why not?
Because you cannot. I mean, if template polymorphism lets you do that, you're in trouble, I guess.
Yeah, but you're rediscovering the proof of false we had at lunch today.
So you can project you can define sigma, and sig is just an insert of sigma where you have a second component which is prop, and even if your first thing is the same.
Proj 1 applied to prop allows you to escape from prop to type, so there is something wrong. Let me check.
No.
Don't check.
No, if template polymorphism put it in prop, it's because the projection are available.
Yeah. That's the problem. I mean, the match is okay.
It's behave like a type.
Yeah, you're right.
It would be the same as without primitive projection, just the projections.
I'm still suspicious. I have a nuke. I might find an interesting bug with that.
Fix the previous one first before looking for another.
And then another question which maybe can be solved quickly is what does it mean to use the dot parenthesis notation, the dot notation?
Very good question.
So I think currently it's a bit bad. I mean, it's just a macro for an application, so we can write 0.s and it's 1, s of 0. This is absurd somehow. So at least I would say we bind it to the record notation. It's systematically used every time we use record and use only for record.
What do you mean, like for projections?
Yes, primitive or not. Whether the record is primitive or not.
Registered as projections. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was wondering. You don't expect to remove the dot notation for non-primitive records.
Maybe later, but not now.
So
not yet later. And maybe another step which could be taken at the same time or not is forcing not to put the parameters of the record, because we've got that information. So in order to be at least compatible with the potential compact representation of projections, we should just make
Yeah,
everything.
that's a huge
The only
compatibility change.
problem with that is that then the notation becomes completely silly, because you put parentheses on something that cannot be composite, but the record could be in there. So you would rather have parentheses dot rather than dot parentheses, especially if you don't have parameters to specify.
Yeah, but this is like the current syntax is linked to historical issues, and we had to do that because the names. There is no syntactic difference between module names and
that's
not true. That's not true. I heard that before.
It's also to pass arguments to the function.
Yeah, to the projection.
Yeah.
Yes, but that was my point. That
it was a choice.
It's not the only reason. Otherwise, we would have.
What's the other reason?
We cannot write projection as in camel in cock because there is no syntactic difference between module and objects.
No, but so what? I mean, why do you need to distinguish them syntactically?
Yeah, you
can resolve. I mean,
could resolve.
No, because they're not past the same. How do you, if you write m.x, how do you know whether, like, at which point are you going to check that, like, this thing is passed as a qualified name, and you're going to check whether by chance you're actually defining something that is.
This is called name resolution. I mean, I have a quality, it may designate more than one thing, and I need to resolve it. But that's fairly standard. It could be a definition or an inactive, and we haven't introduced a backtick.
How do you project using a qualified name for the projection, for instance? So it doesn't work. If you want to write the record P projected with the m.q, then there is no way to write that.
Why not?
And in Camel you could because they are not
capital lowercase.
But why isn't it just a quality as well? It parses the same.
Actually, putting parentheses in that case would actually be useful.
I agree, but not for technical reasons. Because the user syntax would be better.
Yes.
Anyways. I think we cannot.
So maybe we can improve the syntax at the same time.
Yes.
But yes, I think.
Then at least we agree on that. Then
yes.
This is bound to record the report.
Then maybe we'll discover some unexpected.
Then it's not bound to the proj constructor of the syntax, but to the user syntax record.
Exactly. Okay. You define, like, there is already in record up, say, a table for records. You reuse that thing, saying this is a projection.
But then for primitive records, it would mean you get the constant or you get the proj node?
That's the proj node.
You get the projection.
Yes. Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
That's why you get into this
compatibility
issues. To decide this kind of questions.
But I think
that's why this
it would be nice to get the proj node for primitive records.
Yeah.
And still be compatible with non-primitive.
Yes, but
well, I mean, the only difference is a bunch of holes. So.
Also, you have some code is not very aware of the existence of the proj node. But yeah, in principle.
And it would be probably nice to have at least an option that really restricts the projection notation at some point to primitive projections, so that you're aware that things are, like, you're not tricked by the system in your.
It would be nice to have a way to distinguish primitive from non-primitive projections when printing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that would be the way.
Today there is no flag that can.
But when you say primitive, you mean compact or you mean negative?
I mean compact.
Compact by all these items.
Yeah, sorry.
Well,
I don't know, but that's clear. In fact, I would like the flag to be able to distinguish all kinds of.
I think it would be very easy to actually implement compact representation for positive types, removing it out.
See what the term is. That's fine.
Right?
We have only one syntax to discriminate, which is a dot.
What difficulty would there be to do that?
Yes, but today when you do set practical,
you just define the projections that are allowed.
Constant or the primitive projection. You don't need to
I do maps first on a list of pairs, you know.
This is what I tried to do at some point, but so inverted it.
So if we do that, then the next step would be allowing, I think it's probably good to be able to refer by constructors.
It will take a compatibility constant in that case, because you have a partial application of
if we
Yes,
want to
but then
allow-
then when I partially execute this, then if I get the compatibility constant rather than the projection, it's not the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you get back to a compatibility option and it's here. So.
We're screwed with compatibility. Don't try to get first compatibility.
Saying if you try to allow positive and negative types with primitive projection instead of compact representation, so you still allow match and but you define also the compact representation of projections.
But are they convertible? The match with the proj? With the compact? Wow.
That's what I still maintain that to have compact representation, you need negative projections.
Maybe not theoretically, but in the current system, you need to be careful that the system doesn't display two things the same way, but does not convert them. Because otherwise it's going to be.
It's not quite a theory. It's not. I mean, even from point of view of projection, there are a lot of invariants that rely on the existence of neutral forms that are completely broken if you allow both views.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't think you can do that.
Who's sharing?
I think
It's fine.
It depends on what you mean by match. And if you are negative and you define match, of course you have the reduction rule of the macro behind match. But if you keep match as a primitive construction also with negative types.
Match a pair with
How do you check for it?
How do you make that convertible with proj?
Yes, but then it's a question of conversion. It's not anymore a question of reduction. Using I made a sketch and one comment one time, so I didn't make it formally, but I think this is worth to be investigated how to check that a match on a match representation is convertible to a primitive projection, projection from a negative type representation, just by means of commutation using the eta rules in the conversion.
Yeah, but it's going to be commuting conversion.
Sorry?
It's going to be commuting conversion.
Yes,
I mean,
You can implement it with a fix, right? You can implement it with a fix.
No, not with a fix.
Yes, but to use a non-recursive fix, the point of match is that it doesn't compute unless you have the explicit constructor. So you can use a fix to do that guard, and then you just project the components to in the body.
You mean a hack? Or?
No.
Okay, they don't have the same. You can speak as a way.
Guys, I think our chair is a bit depressed. They don't want to keep track of the schedule anymore, but I think we should move on to the next topic anyway.
Okay, so we can discuss.
But we should probably open a wiki page or something like that to discuss on the topic. We were misusing the wiki, and this typically would, rather than an issue or a pull request.
And that's a few issues where we had this discussion already.
So the next one is still by Hugo, right?
Yes. So this is the other.
You did this thing?
Yes. Okay. So it's arbitrary short or long.
Can it be arbitrary short then?
It depends on you, maybe.
Are there many slides?
No, there is not.
Just to know how many times.
So somehow it's maybe redundant with the discussion of Emilio yesterday, to which I was not there. So it's trying to resolve a few problems, let's say, or where I don't know how I don't feel satisfied on some issue, and I don't know how to solve them. So then this preamble is just to say that there are a lot of things which are working well. It's every day I find good things like the discussion yesterday or the report of pull requests. I like it very much.
Thank you.
But question about my situation, let's say, so we can go to the next. And so first, I try to read everything. I'm not reading everything, but I try to read at least the title of every post on GitHub. But it's literally exhausting. So I guess it's the same for everyone.
When you say the title of everything, you mean the title of every pull request every time there is a comment on a pull request?
The title of every comment.
The title of every comment, which doesn't really exist, but you mean the beginning of the comment?
Yes, yes.
So this is what you see in the emails sent you by
Yes,
GitHub?
yes,
Okay.
The, like what you...
So I think for most, I'm speaking from it, but for most people, it's not exhausting because they don't follow it anymore. It's way too much traffic.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it would be exhausting if you were doing this.
Yes, but sometimes you discover that that there is a consensus of something just because of a comment somewhere that you didn't read, but that most all the other.
Okay, so maybe we should just.
Oh, you don't know that this changed. Now you have to do that.
Okay, so this can be solved by saying we should be more careful about how we decide that this is a consensus. I mean, it's important to let the developers be in a situation where they are not forced to read everything, because basically nobody can.
Yes, and somehow it's also a question of hierarchy of information. There are technical discussion that we don't have to read, but somehow at some time we would need a summary so that that everyone, that we can share with everyone.
So this was more or less the idea of the recap.
That's the point of
Yesterday,
So we do it every working group now, and this is probably, I think it was a suggestion by Nicolas.
This is an after the fact thing.
Yes, but it's after the
Short
integration,
amount.
but it's before it's released, right? So there is still an action could still be taken if we realize, why did you do this, and we have to remove it, and we can still. So that was the idea. It's a bit after the fact.
So it can, okay, we should let
So sometimes there are, I don't know, 50 mails on some PR, and someone asked me, can you comment? So what do I do? So I try to read the 50 comments and to make a summary. Did I don't forget some important points? So I read again. I made an answer. I read again to check that I take everything into account, that it's productive. But it's exhausting to doing that systematically.
I think that for this kind of problems, it's very nice to have like a video conference or something. Like sometimes with people around, I work on specific topics, like one afternoon, and we discuss directly, so that it's more efficient.
Ad hoc task forces. Ad hoc task forces.
Yes, but otherwise, like the written media is pretty bad at that, and you lose the energy. You keep repeating yourself.
And it's it's a bit of a paradox. It's like every coffee machine discussion is public, but when you have a coffee machine discussion, you know that it's a coffee machine discussion and that you have to report to the other because they were not there. But here, everything is public, so you don't know if the people read it or if you have to make a summary or it's.
You don't know because like I agree that there is an incredible flow of information on the GitHub certifications. Like.
Yes, to a point that when I know that it has been destroyed somewhere, but I cannot find it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
This is aggravated by the fact that the search tool is not good.
The search tool is better than Bugzilla, I would say. But,
but it's still not great.
But still, you need to know what you are looking for.
Even Google is better.
But I regularly find again issues and cite them. I mean, it's doable, but it's not.
It takes some time to find.
It takes some time. I agree.
Okay, so maybe we share all these
frustrations,
observations, but we don't know what to do exactly. So maybe ad hoc conference call.
Yeah, we do that.
You mean privately?
I think there is some connections indeed with the discussion of yesterday about the number of open issues and the fact that maybe we have too much and too many, and maybe they are not organized well enough, and maybe we should try to have some places where we can find again the information quickly. And also another thing that would help finding the information quickly is trying very hard to not diverge on a discussion, to avoid having a very interesting discussion that cannot be found anymore because it was on a completely unrelated.
So maybe I'm doing that too much.
Yes,
but this was not a reproach.
No, but we do that. We all do that. Even on PRs that are not controversial, because of course, what is very controversial is divergent. But on non-controversial PRs, I mean, we are technical guys. Sometimes we see a thing and it makes us think about something related, but not the same. And then we always comment on the wrong one.
Yeah,
and then we don't find it.
What can we think of that would help us to do this differently? Because I'm just not doing it is somehow frustrating because it means not having this conversation.
No, it means having it somewhere else. Well, and this is where psychology plays a role. And at least I know that probably in my psychology, implicitly, so what I should be doing is opening an issue, probably, and the number of open and unintended issues, and the low probability of getting an answer if I do open an issue is really making me comment on the unrelated one rather than open an issue.
I agree.
So maybe people have other mechanisms.
We should close the issues.
Really,
I open it.
I can justify. So I try to read at least the title of all requests. Like for issues, it's like an uninterrupted stream of. You cannot humanly read all the issues that keep popping faster than you can read them.
So I have a proposal because GitHub is helping us with new things every day, and so when we have a comment that is not completely related, put it where you want to put it, and if the discussion turns out to be interesting, you go to the you go to the comment. There is a a menu. You click on this, and there is reference in new issue.
But okay, so that's good. But I think we have another problem.
So this is to finish quickly. This would be a way to say, okay, maybe the discussion is hard to. It's hard to have the discussion if you open a new issue now. But if you want it to be found later, then this is a way to make it more quicker to find. So go to a comment instead of the main. Okay, here. Yeah.
So this is good, but I think it has to come with another action, which is some issues we should just answer. So for example, 15 days ago, someone opened an issue with the label kind question, which is typically this kind of stuff. What is the purpose of the function kind of type? Okay, and then the pointer to the line. I mean, so this shouldn't take 15 days to the whole team to reply. Maybe we can say.
But
I think it's not the right place. I think that like it would be on Gitter, it would definitely have been answered.
Yeah, but what prevented you to answer, for instance?
I saw that thing and I said, "All right, I'm going to answer." And then I just like attention span on internet is about 5 seconds, so I just opened another tab and.
Okay, so
I think we do it well when in real time. I mean, I read it. I can answer. I'm not competent, but ping this or who or where.
But this is good, but it has a problem, which is that when people have the same question later, and then you have to repeat the process. Here, it could be archived with the answer, so that's much better. And
so,
you mean?
No.
If we reply, so first, I mean, I'm pretty sure this guy spent more time.
GitHub is quite good at telling you if you come up again and say
Yes.
blah blah kind of type, it'll say, hey, why don't you look at this thing, man?
What is the purpose? And then you see there is no purpose, and then your answer, I don't know, but on Gitter you would ask again, someone would read it, process the thing, and be the memory of the system, but it would be better if.
So I think there is a problem of an organizational problem that we have to solve, every one of us, regarding the fact that if you want to answer later to a comment, you should have a way to not forget about this.
No, but I mean, in my opinion, the problem is more concrete, is that for pull requests, we have this code owner system, so you're more or less ensure that somebody is going to be pinged, and more directly than just the team. And here you have the dilution responsibility.
Okay.
Yes,
most of us read this and thought, yeah, I know this function more or less. I could maybe reply, and then we move to something else. Because we are not.
What was it? Sorry, I lost a part of the conversation.
You even.
I replied to you in person.
Yes, to the issue.
You came to my office. You asked the question. I replied.
I should have time to answer.
I think this is the point. We would all like to be responsive and being able to reply.
But we need to divide.
But there is no one as a duty somehow to ensure that there is a reply.
Yeah, but also
to answer this,
because of the.
So then maybe we need to
have a way of
to have to share for 1 month. Someone is responsible to ensure that there is a reply to everything.
So I will say this is not what I would imagine, but to reach the same goal, I would rather dispatch the duties. So everybody has always the duties, and that you don't really have to answer, but you are responsible. So you do whenever you can, like reviews for you, the components you maintain. But the problem is here, you cannot be expected to answer on the whole system all the questions.
But you mean what? There is an algorithm which...
work, you need somebody to do the triage.
Yeah,
so this is what Hugo was proposing.
So I read So I read a blog post, and I'm going to go in the same direction as both of you. I read a blog post on proper bug triaging recently, and the guy was giving very strict rules, and maybe we don't want to apply them all of them, but one of them was when an issue should always be assigned, and so when it's created, it's automatically assigned to the project leader. It was in a different context, I think, and then the project leader reassigns it to the person that they feel is most qualified. And then if the person doesn't feel qualified, they reassign it to whoever they think is qualified. And he says a bug is like a hot potato. And but I don't think this is a perfect solution in our context.
In our context, we have too many cold potatoes. That's the problem. They were hot at some point, but it was like 10
No, but we can try.
So you can ping.
No, but I know, but we can try to start with new hot potatoes to see what it does. But basically, we could have a rolling person that is which is assigning issues to other developers, only new issues to other developers. We need to address all issues in a different way. And then the developer, when they are assigned,
there is one thing that is missing then, because I tried to do this some time ago. The problem is that people already have many assigned issues and they ignore assignments.
Yeah, so maybe
we need a way to distinguish. Either we remove or at least we distinguish the newly assigned from the old ones, because you don't want to ping on. We need something to keep track of what is.
Could there be a hot tag?
Sometimes people have a frozen tag or something like the dual to say
or backlog tag. We could put a backlog tag, which means that this was from the days back in the days, and we should do something about it at some point. But this is not as urgent.
And so the dispatcher would not ping the assignee on back to log, whatever. But we need a way to distinguish, otherwise it doesn't work. Okay, try to-
So if we do that, no one feel excluded because he wanted to answer, but it's
You can always
it's not
answer if you
assigned.
want.
Or,
You
or
you are welcome to answer.
or
some
even
questions.
if we are not assigned, you are welcome to.
And sure,
of course.
Okay.
I don't think
In that
anybody
case-
would complain if it's a problem.
Or if
I
you
don't
want,
know. No, sometimes there are some people who say, "Oh, but it's my specialty. It's
Yeah.
me to answer."
I don't think this is
We
how
don't
we
do
work.
I think we have enough issues that we can.
we all have our, but yeah, in that case, if someone assigns someone else and you think you are better in a better place to answer,
You
or
can
you
say,
just
"Hey,
want to do it, then you can remove the assignment and put yourself instead. If the person self-assigns, it means on the other hand that they want to handle it, and in that case,
can communicate.
you can communicate. But if some person has self-assigned, this means something different, and you should not remove their assignment.
Having too many.
Self-assignment is visible?
No, but well, yes, it's not clearly visible, but you can, you have
The history of the.
yeah, you have the timeline where you know who assigned who.
It's clearly visible, but it's not, you don't get notifications.
Okay, so something can be done. Maybe you.
I can try to propose
lead on that.
a follow-up on that.
I think we should be more than one triaging.
No. I'm not saying I'm going to try.
Okay.
I'm going to propose a process.
But we should anyway be more than one.
Oh yeah, but
Especially if you don't want to do it.
But we need to discuss the process again.
The problem with more than one is.
And Nico, I see you use your computer to.
Yeah, there is a problem with more than one. Indeed, maybe Maxime, we should not be more than one. We
Can
should
you
just
work to the-
roll often.
Maybe,
No, it should be more than one.
enroll.
Then roll.
But
still-
I know the problem when we are more than one. There is one that does the job and the others that doesn't.
Oh, by the way, sorry, it's unrelated, but it's not a comment on the PR. I think we should do the same for release management. Always have two release managers at the same cycle. Yeah, but we need maybe before the end of the working group to talk about.
But that's different in the sense that two release manager is one with experience, one new. So the position is not the same. When you are two to do the same task, then if you are the most active, then you are basically being exploited by the one that is less active.
Is it possible to do something like in conferences? You have a release manager and the assistant, which is going to be the next release.
In the case of release manager, yes, or in the other way around. The release manager and the old release manager that provides advice. But in the context of triaging issues, I don't see how you can have two roles that are not exactly the same.
Oh no, but this was more a division of work.
Yeah, but I'm not sure I believe in
How
that.
many issues do we receive a day?
That's not so much. That's about yeah, but on average, I have a paper that talks about this.
It grows from 700
Okay,
in 2
you
years.
resend that to me, please.
Sorry?
One a day.
You send that
Yes,
to me.
one a day.
So
That's more than one a day. That's about 3 a day.
are the chairs back? Is the chairing back?
One a day you could,
So
because
are the
weekends we
I
don't.
mean,
work.
since we are on GitHub, it's one a day, I think.
So yeah, I think we should.
So still related to the bug somehow. There are many cases where I feel I can do something. For instance, fixing a bug on notation or fixing another bug. I know I can do it, but I'm missing time. I'm exhausted by following everything. So maybe I should change my way of working. I don't know, but I don't know what to do then. When there is something I know I could do that I think it's worth to be done, but I don't have time to do it.
Is there an issue that
I'm a bit older, and there are younger people. Is there something that we can do?
There are many things.
Sometimes what I do in that case is that I say, I think we should do this and that, and I don't have time to do it. But someone wants to pick it up.
In your scenario, do you have an open issue to describe the task?
Is it already an open issue when you are?
Yes.
Is it already an open bug report, or is
It
it?
can be. I can make a new issue, but I mean there are so many issues which are not answered that.
Okay,
That's again
the same problem.
So this I agree. I mean, I think the proper thing is to open an issue, and indeed the current status makes it like we feel like we are wasting even more time.
Yeah. But so if there is already an issue, of course you answer there instead of opening a new one. And if there is not, then you open the issue. And you do like I think doing like Mathieu said is very useful. You share your knowledge to whoever will handle this in the future. It can even be you, yourself.
But I think I do it often, but no one. I mean, for notation, for instance, sometimes I'm telling, oh, this should be feasible by working at this level, on this level.
This is not necessarily lost.
Yes, I agree. It's not necessarily lost. Maybe in 3 years. Or,
but maybe just a little makes you realize that you have so much to do. So in so little time, but that's just.
I think also notations are a bit specific because I think it's a part of the system where we don't have a good spread of the knowledge.
Yeah.
So it's hard for us to keep up to.
George is trying.
Yes, that's very good. But maybe one of the reasons why you don't get someone who says, "Oh yes, I will do it," is because we are not really not expert at that part, and we're missing. I think we're missing. On other parts, maybe it works better.
Yes. So then I think we are going short in time. So maybe I can go to one of the next question. Is I feel that we are already a lot on the few as a size of developer. But I mean, it would be difficult to be more if we don't separate more clearly the task that we share. We are somehow polyvalent currently, working all giving comments and review. Maybe Gaëtan and Enrico are Emilio also are very systematic somehow in answering. So maybe I would say that the 3 of you maybe.
Gaëtan has the best statistics.
The statistics.
You can find it on
the most responsive, let's say, and regular. But can we try to, for each of us, to tell what the things which are specific to us, which should be our task, so that we leave room for other people, so that it's clear if we have extra people, what would be the role.
For instance, like we could in the contributing guide say here is a brief overview of basically what the components are and what the specialties of existing developers are, and
so that was more or less what the co-learners think.
Yeah, but it's maybe too specific as a co-learner, or not specific enough. I don't know.
Can you say again the problem? I don't think I got.
If you want to welcome new people, they may be frightened by the fact that they are stepping on the territory of somebody.
I think we should ask to the
If
newest newcomer.
better described, is that what you were saying?
Yes.
If the territories are better described, then you make it more open that at some places you're welcome to acquire competence.
Obviously,
aren't you welcome to acquire competence?
Obviously you are welcome to acquire competence even if they are already expensive. And it's
so don't learn this.
This is even better because you want to prevent any knowledge loss.
I don't know. Did you have any
map of
feeling like
competencies?
No. I mean, there are situations. So one of them typically is the functionalization of the code. I feel that everyone has an opinion. Gaëtan has an opinion, Emilio has an opinion, Pierre-Marie, I, and we are willing to do something. But so maybe it's a different problem, but we don't.
You don't have a place to say this is going to go like this, or the plan we agree on is this. And
so what we do usually is we open what we call meta issues to discuss the organization of the.
Yes, but people like Emilio or Pierre-Marie and I somehow are polyvalent, are doing too many things, and they cannot at the same time be responsible of some task and be on all the tasks. So we have to match. I mean, I'm talking for me also. I mean, we have to make a choice. We cannot.
What's the problem? This is true. What's the problem?
I mean, I felt the same, overwhelmed by notification, etc. And I'm surprised you say that I have a good scores in pull request, because today I vaguely read the list of pull requests. If someone is assigned to me or I need to review, I look at it, and then I always only follow the threads where I'm citing participating thing. So in GitHub I use very much this thing.
Maybe you should try to switch to like
the
that.
thing, and
yes.
you see, there's a lot, and then participating 5. So I'm happy. I click, I look at the 5,
And you have saved. Notice that you have saved for later. That can be useful if you want to go back to something.
This is new.
This
Also,
is new,
this is new.
So you have a button on the left, on the right of any notification that you can click to put in saved for later. Here,
And something that I do, and I don't know if it's that, but something that I do is that sometimes I also look at the global list of things that happen, and then I'm compulsively hitting this button.
Sorry, which button?
This one mutes the thing.
Yeah, this one
This is survival.
I'm a bit afraid of clicking this one because I would like that it's automatically unmute when I mention again or something.
This is the case.
This is the case?
When you mention me again, it is unmuted.
Oh,
At least this is my understanding of it.
Oh, interesting. We should confirm this and maybe use it more.
I will try this notification.
So where you have the computer in front of you. So let's where should we
unmute?
You may have
the June already launched.
Maybe this one. The June, no.
It's just
no. You ping
to
me
avoid
in this
noise for other people that I
ping me in this one that I'm supposed probably to do something about.
Make 5 fixes.
This is muted.
Refresh so that you don't see it or whatever.
Now I have 4 participating.
So I'm pinging you.
Do your job.
How much time?
And let's see if it comes back into my mailbox.
What was the schedule?
I don't know. The schedule is.
Yeah, we are half an hour
Okay, done.
late, but it's the hiking session, so it was a bit long.
Oh, you have a new
No, we are
notification.
Okay, so
45 minutes.
You have a
just
nowhere.
to summarize about tasks,
It's not here anyway.
Go to Android.
It's also it's also about
Yeah.
how to organize
Okay, it
my
works.
time, because I feel that
No, but it's not in participating.
Yeah, it is.
Go back.
It is now.
It is now.
When you
Okay,
move
so
back
it
to
took,
Android,
it
it
took
does
just.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, it
so
works
it's
great. So
okay.
let's use
So
this
it's
more.
here. If you think you have nothing to do with it, you mute. And then they ping you. This is
And sometimes they knock on your door. But
yeah.
We're working on this. Should I add a mute button?
No, but this is really great.
But anyway, I think it's impossible to follow everything. If you follow everything, you get exhausted. So sometimes you miss stuff. That's life. It
I
happens.
did it for 1 year when I was merging PRs, and it had impact on my health. I stopped. And I'm not joking. And
so I need 10 minutes, maybe more. So I don't care about more discussion. So it's all question about what. So you can move to the next. About how to organize my time also somehow. So for instance, I feel that maybe it's necessary because it's time to get possession of the code somehow. That the balance between refactoring on feature and fixing bugs is not optimal with respect to what I would expect.
So can you say what directions you expect?
I would expect that we are guided by new features somehow, with necessary time for bug fix, because it's part of ensuring the life of feature. And what is the place of refactoring? I mean, refactoring is important because new feature sometimes needs refactoring. But I feel we tend to be sometimes too shy in developing new feature and preferring just refactoring. And I think refactoring should be always motivated by new feature.
I think it is always.
No?
But it's not direct.
But I mean, I strongly disagree with that. I mean,
Yes.
I think it's a valid opinion, and I'm not sure if mine is more right. But my feeling was that we neglected for too long refactorings, and the years, let's say, that led to 8.5. I think this trend started for 8.6. We started to have fewer new features and more cleanups. 8.5 was more like new features.
It took 3 years and a half.
And I think this was more or less. I mean, I think it was unsatisfactory. It led to code that was on the verge of
It's harder to maintain.
being impossible to maintain. Yeah. So I mean, I agree with the fact that we changed the trend, but I personally I see it as a good thing. I don't think it's a problem of not. We all want new features. I think we dare implement new features. I mean, it's not a problem, but we want to do this on a more stable foundation. I see it as a good thing.
Also, we still have the ability to work on new features outside the thing. So Matthew's equations is a great thing, and it's good that it's not inside the code yet. Then, so that
Well, if it's the same, you could do it outside. And,
yeah.
So we're working on
maybe the last thing I wanted to say that I think the current ratio is also because we had a lot of backlog refactorings that were not done before and needed. So maybe I'm not expecting the ratio to be constant. Maybe that's one thing. I expect that we are catching up with late refactorings, and maybe once it's more or less caught up, then we can probably change.
I'm not convinced at all.
So we wrap up this and let go to the next step.
Sorry,
Maybe you want to say make it short.
I would like to have examples of refactorings that were not guided by features, but maybe features that do not come immediately.
I added interfaces on plugins in the code base, MLI files. No plan, no follow-up.
Okay.
No, but I have dozens of.
Okay, but these are very minor things.
I changed the type of binders in the kernel. We had ad hoc types for binders. I didn't base anything on it, but I have dozens of examples.
Okay.
There are examples from me also.
Yeah, sure.
No, it's more a question of balance. I mean that.
Okay. Try to move to the next.
I mean, I see so many things to do that I feel frustrated that we are not devoting more time to feature also.
You've been holding these positions for so long. I remember hearing you say things like that 4 years ago. So many things to do.
We still do.
One thing I can say that I usually get, this is a question I often ask to users, and they seem more or less happy. Also, one thing you should not forget is that we release every 6 months. Not having as many features for each version compared to the previous ones is still. And if you take 3 years, then we do have new features. Maybe not as many as 8.5, but comparable to say 8.4.
3 years.
3. It was the release cycle of 8.5.
Yeah.
No, but in 3 years.
6, 7, 8, 9.
6, 7, 8.
So, for instance, if you go before, so I mentioned it because just it came yesterday, but it's many years also that the problem is on the table. Is to have explicit coercion in unification, so that we can delay the insertion of a coercion. So that we can solve the asymmetry of coercion, so that we can. So it was in relation with the bug posted 2 days ago by Yano, and I feel powerless how to make progress. I mean, it's a question of time for me.
You don't have to.
I'm missing time, and I don't know how to organize. Can we organize?
Focus on.
How can I organize? What should I do Should I renounce to have these features because maybe it's not priority for Colf, and Colf is not anymore an innovating project. It's more a stable project. It's more a project for stability. We can say that.
It's possible.
It's binary.
Choose one project.
It's binary. One.
You should have your own priorities. Everyone in the team has their own priorities.
But for the specific,
you are the only one that can decide where you want to focus your time.
But it's true that you have a large spectrum of things you can do. I mean, larger than most of us,
which
because
is
you're
good in
you're
principle.
the longest.
Yes, but it's a question of how to transmit.
Yeah, exactly. So this, for example, I know these components. I wasn't aware personally that this was something that was thought about. So I don't think there is an issue about that. I had never heard.
There are many discussions about unification.
Yeah, I missed them. I don't know how or why, but it would be interesting.
It's always the same thing of gathering the information, especially things that happen in PR, where we spent 15 minutes talking about something, and then we switch to the next thing, and we forget about the issue because the PR was merged, and we just forget about
But
the
unification is something which we cannot work just 1 day or 1 week.
No,
it's something we should allocate 1 month, at least 1 month for someone who knows, or 1 year for.
It's more.
What makes me a bit sad is that it seems that you relinquish your capability to work focused on a given question because of all the rest of the solicitation.
Yes.
And you should not feel guilty of focusing on one question.
And click ignore or continue.
At some point, you're not responsible. And I think most of the people in the group do things like that. They have periods.
I mean, I was away
they
for
already
like 2 months
focused.
of code development proper for just working on equations. I just made a few pull requests, commented a few things, but I was completely ignoring the whole.
But if you ping Mathieu and call him on the phone and so on at the end, he merges the PR.
So maybe in your case, because of the habit of having been the chief architect for a long period, you still think that it's your responsibility. You have like a guilt of not seeing the bugs being fixed. But at some point, you can also say, well, it's okay. It's okay because I'm focusing on a feature, and somebody has to focus on features every now and then, and this is being delegated to the whole group.
And maybe we didn't say it because it seemed obvious to us, but I think we are understaffed. The manpower is a bit light. Unification is a good example. I think we have nobody today that can fully devote his time to unification. Both of you know unification well and could do things, but it's a significant component. It would take a lot of time to work on it. I think we should have someone more or less specialized on unification, doing only this. And we don't because we. But this also answers your question. If you see someone new would come in the team, we would have work probably. So then, I mean, you have to make choices.
We could maybe, I don't know, advertise more that we are always
looking for people.
But
I think we do.
I mean, for instance, we have a problem that we take people. I'm saying we, but I'm not really part of this. We take people in internship, PhDs, and then they spend a lot of time on development, and this is not necessarily a good thing for their career. But there are people that are not intending to do research, and that would be interested, I think, to do internships to do some development.
Yes, but I have the impression the problem with unification is a much harder problem.
Yeah.
It's something that you want to be taken care of by professional researchers.
Yeah. But notation is also
It
very
doesn't mean
difficult.
we cannot open the circle of people we invite to work on it. We could try to work with more people on this
And train people.
but this is not the kind of topic that we can use internships on. Well,
but maybe you can train people on other topics like notations and hopes that this will give you more time to work on unification. I don't know.
I think notations is not a good example because it's also very hard.
I know it's very complex, but maybe not as in
No, but I wonder what the end of the sentence is. It doesn't seem to be very true.
Maybe I'm completely wrong.
Notation are kind of in the trusted code base of the browser you use. So
Yes, that's another.
Extracting C out of Galena terms using notations.
Well, that's just.
And then, I know. So we should really, it's a complex component that we don't want to break.
And I'm not using that browser. I'm using the one that
has F star in it.
That has F star in it, which is not more reassuring.
Anyway.
Okay, I think I'm done.
Okay.
Thanks for your feedback.
And maybe the last thing is feel free to propose roadmaps on even on topic you are the only expert, like in notations, I think. And so when you discuss with George, and you, because I saw some exchanges recently.
Yes, we are very good at change.
I'm unable to follow the technical things, but on the other hand, if at some point a kind of roadmap on notations emerges, I'm pretty sure I could give feedback, maybe not useful feedback, but we could give feedback.
There's another thing that's
so that you don't feel like alone. And,
there was a question on manpower, and we need to be able to tell the story because maybe we can find ways of increasing our manpower.
And we hope it will.
So that's another issue. We should maybe we should be aware that in the next few weeks or in the next few months, if we can find jobs that we can describe like job descriptions, that would be useful too. So, maybe we'll have to talk about that. But, like you were talking about triaging and all this, how can we attract manpower on this kind of work? Does it make sense? Is it easy? I don't know.
No, you'd rather have set out chunks of work so that you have. It's not the triaging per se that's the problem. It's the fact that there aren't people at the end to triage to.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, we have both problems.
No, but sometimes you don't even have you don't triage because you know that it will be useless because nobody will address it. So yeah.
So Emiliano, what should we do with the schedule?
Do what you want, I mean.
Why
should I take a choice?
What time is it?
12:30.
What was the acting session supposed to be?
Fixing the soundless bug, I guess.
Okay.
But in small groups, so we can have a quick lunch and then fix the. But we
Gaëtan, we have to go.
Gaëtan, I know that you have a very dogmatic view on what we should do about the universe problem. Yeah, like we should just remove template polymorphism and be done with it. So that's a bit.
That is what I tried to propose yesterday.
But
don't be that everybody uses it.
Could we still use?
We don't all agree on that? Or?
For the minor release. For the minor release.
No, you cannot do that in a minor release.
So we don't. Okay, except Gaëtan.
So sorry, I shouldn't have made it. But Gaëtan, I think it would be nice if we set up a technical task in a group, not to bother everybody, to try to find a reasonable intermediate fix for the minor release. And I was wondering if we could make use of your expertise on the domain, Gaëtan, or if you really don't want to look at that.
Sorry, what?
If I don't know, a group is working on trying to fix the soundless bug on universes. Would you be interested in joining?
Yeah.
Yes? Even if it's a temporary fix that doesn't involve removing template polymorphism.